The news has been dominated by shifts in the Middle East. Syria, the government is gone. Assad regime has fallen after more than 50 years. Hezbollah has been mostly removed from Lebanon. The Iranians are weakened, and all these things are happening throughout the region. But let's stop for a minute and think about the people on the ground, because those are the people most affected by these shifts. Not the people reading the newspaper in Europe, not the online audience, the people on the ground in Syria. And today, that's exactly what we're doing. We're getting an inside look into the life of the people from the perspective of someone who's seen Syria and Lebanon on the inside.
What's happening is biblical. The magnitude of the change in the Middle East.
It's a battle between good in the world and evil in the world.
Israel murdered their own people.
If you don't know enough about the region, zip it, because back where I come from, it costs people their lives.
Shalom, Rawan. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
So, Rawan, since the last time we both sat down to talk, which has been roughly almost 6 months, one, you've gained a huge amount of momentum, both in Israel and in the Arab world, talking about what's happening here. And I asked you just before we started rolling how you're feeling, and your answer was optimistic and positive. So I'd be interested to hear why you say that.
What's happening is historical. One might also say what's happening is biblical. We're going through very intensive times. The rest of the world doesn't feel the magnitude of the change in the Middle East. Take, for example, that I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese. Yeah. How long have the Lebanese been suffering the tyranny of Hezbollah, which hijacked their country? And now Hezbollah has been beaten up, humiliated.
Yes.
And lately, if a Hezbollah member sneezes in Lebanon or Syria, Israel was taking them out. So Hezbollah is weakened, which allowed the rebels in Syria to advance, took Aleppo, and then Hama, Homs, Damascus in 11 days. And the world was watching. Nobody interfered. And I'm not saying that Israel initiated what happened, but it enabled it by beating Hezbollah up in Lebanon. And what happened in Syria is massive. It still gives me goosebumps. When people talk about Assad, they don't understand it's not Assad that is problematic. It is a system. It's like a mafia. They are a cartel. They are monsters. And Assad deserves the trophy of the monster of the century. What we've been seeing emerging from prisons is the tip of the iceberg, let alone the Captagon industry. So what happens
let's delay and explain what this is. I think many people at home wouldn't understand the mechanics of the industry. Syria was, not just Syria, also Lebanon to a certain degree, the way they financed the dictatorship is they were exporting drugs, amphetamines, to mostly the Arab world.
Producing and exporting
yes.
In the Gulf, in the Arabian Peninsula, but also in the US and in Europe. Captagon is sold to children, to school children.
People have this saying where they, the evil you know is better than the evil that you don't know.
Yeah.
And they always talk about like, well, what about Assad? What about, Saddam Hussein? What about Kim Jong-un and their family? They say, well, we know at least this guy. We don't want to replace him with something else. They don't understand how these governments operate. And you've talked about this a lot, about the understanding of pure evil when you encounter it. And people look at this and say, well, let's stay with what we know. No, let's allow these villainous characters to leave the stage of history and be forgotten and allow something else to happen.
He's a monster. He is gone. You should write to your Syrian friends and congratulate them. And you should, as a human being, celebrate that we got rid of Assad. Let's give the Syrian people the chance. They are a terrified people living under an Orwellian regime. I have friends in Europe who cannot finish George Orwell's 1984 because they think it's so disturbing. The Syrians live it, and now it's over.
Yeah, I think there's a problem. There's a fault in the way the West thinks about these kind of issues. They're looking for a quick fix. Well, if you say Assad is bad, who's going to replace him? And if you say that Islamic movements or revolutionary movements are problematic, well, where's the perfect fix? The solution is usually multiple steps forward and multiple years and sometimes decades in the future. The question isn't who is going to replace Assad. The question should be, do the people of Syria deserve better than Assad? And then the answer is obviously yes. I try to get into the minds of people that live under these kind of governments. Over 50 years, where anyone who spoke against the government disappeared. And they disappeared into prisons, they were executed, they used chemical weapons against their own people again and again and again. I go to a different place. I go to the place of people look at the prism of geopolitics and they look at the prism of, what is the regional solution and how are the powers that be going to negotiate this? And no, you're forgetting that this world is about humanity. It's about the people that live in these countries. Someone in Syria whose parents and their grandparents had to suffer the Assad regime, what level of freedom do they feel? And that emotional burden that's being removed is something that I think anyone in the world who would understand that should wish for those people. And not just them, anyone in the region. Definitely.
I think the world saw women imprisoned with children, small children. And they got pregnant in prison.
Yeah.
They were raped and delivered babies who've never seen the light of day.
Yeah.
You cannot be more cruel than that. So you cannot compare Syria to Afghanistan or to Egypt. You cannot compare the Syrian people to the Gazans. These Syrians...
Why do you say that?
I found out that it's an eye-opening statement whenever I say this in Israel. The Syrians are not like the Gazans. The culture is very different, and no Syrian woman learns that her son died, even with the Syrian army, and rejoices. This is against human nature.
I see what you're saying. You're saying there's a difference in the way they align with the ideology of the government. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not only that. They love their children, they're normal human beings, more than any ideology. No one tells you, okay, I give all my children for the cause.
Yeah.
And if you kill them, I'll give birth to new children. This mentality, this corrupt, twisted, deranged mindset I only saw it among Palestinians and the supporters of Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Radical Islam.
Radical Islam, but it's so ingrained in the Palestinians, you have to sacrifice yourself. You voluntarily die for the cause. The mothers go on the streets and they rejoice the death of the martyr, their children, against human nature. I'm pretty sure that the Iraqi militias feel the same, the Houthis feel the same, an Iranian who adores the Islamic Republic, the Islamic regime, feels the same. But the Lebanese and the Syrians don't behave this way. And they're not defying Israel or anybody else. They don't harbor sentiments that I'm going to kill you, I'd like to drink your blood.
Yeah.
These terms, we hear the expressions we hear in Gaza. What Hamas expresses, their leadership, the Syrians don't think this way.
After October 7 happened, and thousands of rockets were flown from the Gaza Strip and from Lebanon into Israel, over 57,000 acres of forests have been reduced to ash. We're calling on you to do something about it. At TBN Israel, we're starting a campaign to replant these forests. We want you to be part of rebuilding the land of Israel.
We're about to celebrate Tu B'Shvat in Israel. This is deeply ingrained in our culture.
In this holiday, the people of Israel plant trees.
It's unique that we get to involve our viewers in this.
Definitely.
To take part in the restoration of this land.
So if you want to be part of it, click on the link below to plant a tree, or many, and help us restore hope to our land.
Love is stronger than the devastation and the hatred of the Islamic Republic of Iran, of Hamas. It's stronger than all of them.
Yeah.
And we're going to prove that together.
Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and stand with Israel.
Let me show you something interesting. Yes, this is something they found on the...
It says, note recovered from the pocket of a Hamas terrorist. Sharpen the blades of your swords and be pure in your intentions before Allah. Know that the enemy is a disease that has no cure except beheading and uprooting the hearts and livers. Attack them. What terrible words.
Here people leave notes.
We're sitting in the beautiful Museum of Tolerance, and you just had a film released here the other day. It's called Tragic Awakening. It's a very, very powerful film. And some of those points, I think, will be very new to people who don't understand it.
When I was contacted to narrate a documentary on October 7th, I said, no way. I'm not even Israeli. Like, how can it be my voice? I can't be telling the story. But then I understood the reasoning behind it, and I decided to do it because this might incentivize the Arabs to watch the documentary, because I'm saying with total clarity, I'm a recovered anti-Semite. I also perceive the Jew as an enemy. I've been in your shoes. I have been brainwashed. And I came to realize this is evil. These are lies. And we made the film exposing the reactions, the aftermath of October 7th, shaming the world. How could you justify, how could you call for more in the West? But also to talk about the morality in Judaism. Even the Nazis, Hitler wanted to kill the Jews, not because they were bad, because they were good. And this is eye-opening. I
was trying to think to myself, what is unique about this story? And the story connects a couple dots that I think will be counterintuitive to many of the viewers, which is it threads the violence and the mindset that leads to October 7th on the Hamas side with Hitler anti-Semitism. And then instead of just saying, well, this is the same, equating the two, it says, no, there's a moral reasoning behind this, where it's a battle between the representation of good in the world and the representation of evil in the world. And for the evil to sort of be able to make a claim of moral superiority, it has to discredit the moral good in the world, and the moral good in the world is represented by Judeo-Christian values. That's what your film says, and I agree with that very, very strongly. There's a point where I have a problem with a point made in the film, which you say, well, yes, the biggest evil in the world was befallen to the Jewish people under Hitler. Yes, it was a very unique moment in violence and in hatred in the world. I think there's another problem, and the problem is that not only Jews historically have been the victims of violence. Not only Jews have been the victims of persecution over ethnicity or religion or faith or skin color or anything like that. And people only focus on the violence that has to do with the Jewish people. I'll just be honest. If it's brown on brown violence or black on black violence, no one is interested. If it's Muslim on Muslim violence, no one cares. It doesn't make a headline anywhere in the world. The events that took place in Syria were the culmination of a 6-month process. It didn't even make the 3rd page in the newspaper until it was, the government was overthrown. And the victims of that are not just the Jewish people, it's everyone else who's suffering in the background that doesn't get any attention. The Syrian people, the Iranian people, the Lebanese people, countless countries in Africa and in Asia, the Korean people. It's all these people that are suffering, and everyone only wants to talk about the Jews and the Palestinians.
That's a very good point, actually. My statement in the film is, this hatred of the Jews is the most long-lasting.
Yes.
It's been consistent throughout history, and it's become an obsession. And this obsession is distracting the world from so many tragedies happening. You should be doing your homework, your due diligence, your obligations for the weak and the needy and the oppressed. No Jews, no news. It is a cliche, we keep repeating it, but it is true.
We'll zoom out for a second. What's unique about you as a character is that you're confusing. Wait a minute, Rawan, you said you're from an Arab country, so you hate, no, you don't hate Israel. Oh, you hate the Jews then? No, you don't hate the Jews. And it forces a conversation that's more nuanced. That's where you really can have change in their mind and their heart, where there's suddenly all these axioms they had about the world. Everything falls into these categories. It's suddenly destabilized, and they're like, at that moment, they can look around and say, wait a minute, maybe I don't understand everything.
Yes. That's
the moment where a good conversation can come out of it. And I think you, in the way you operate, you force that conversation.
Thank you. It's very interesting that you put it this way. It's exactly my situation. I confuse people, and then sometimes I'm attacked, especially in the West, by the leftists who assume You are Syrian-Lebanese, so they can make comments about the Israelis and assume I'm agreeing. I'm like, no, you should rethink what you believe, and that's why. And then they tell me you're a traitor. How dare you? How can you do this to your people? If you truly care about the Gazans, take off this kafiyeh and stop this monkey business on the street. You should call for the release of the hostages for the sake of the Gazans. You don't have to care about the Israelis. I didn't see one demonstration, not one pro-Palestine demonstration on the streets in the West calling for the release of the hostages. We saw people saying, kill the hostages, by people who often do not know where Israel is on the map. If you don't know enough about the region, zip it, because back where I come from, it costs people their lives.
The ignorance costs lives. My sense is, and I've thought about this a lot during the war, is that the people with the strongest opinions are the ones who never pay a price for that opinion, and the ones who know least about the opinion. And it takes someone from this region to reframe the conversation and say, and I strongly believe this personally, it isn't just about who's right and wrong and who's stronger or weaker in the equation. It's like, is on the human level, is this bettering the life of these people? And that's where I often feel pain as I look at these conversations. They're without any consideration of human suffering, without any consideration of empathy of the suffering of other people. And so you have these black and white statements. Only the people of Gaza, only the people of Israel. Say, no, you're wrong altogether. Like the conversation should be, I feel empathy and I feel the suffering of every Palestinian child, I do, who suffers and dies in the Gaza Strip, as do I for every Jewish child, as do I for every Syrian child and every woman and every man that dies in those countries. That should be the basis for the conversation, and then you go from there. Is what you're promoting, this agenda, this ideology, is it going to make their life better, or is it going to make their life worse?
I hope that Hamas did not succeed into obliterating every bridge we built between these countries and didn't succeed in obliterating hope. This is what's most impressive in Israel. That is what gave me goosebumps when I came here. This resilience. And this resilience doesn't mean they take guns and they go fight. This resilience, you hang on to the good in your heart. Someone whose daughter is in Gaza still believes in peace. As a mother, when I hear this is unbelievable. And I tell her, can you forgive the Arabs? She tells me, the Arabs? I'm a physician. My colleagues are Arabs. I treat Arabs every day. I don't have to forgive the Arabs, but I cannot forgive who did this to my daughter. This is resilience. This is good. This is hope. You didn't lose the good in your heart. And I love it when someone writes to me, and he told me, thank you. He lost his niece, and he said, my heart was filled with hatred. I never wanted to speak to an Arab again, and you gave me hope because you reminded me that this is not how I want to be as a good Jew. And they remembered that those in Gaza, the children, didn't have a choice. Nobody consulted with them before waging a war against Israel.
I want to end with a hopeful message. I think you do something very beautiful, and it's this. Is you're able to show a balanced image and to show love and care for the people of Israel and the state of Israel without abandoning the people that you come from.
Definitely. I want to clarify one point.
Please.
I do care for everyone in the region. I don't understand the history of Japan. I come from here. I'm invested in here, in this region. These are my people. We look alike. We share the same DNA. And our identities are hybrid and complex. And no, we don't have to fit in a drawer and in a box. And if people don't like it, they can move on with their lives. Only the Palestinians perceive me as a traitor. They assume that if I support the war Israel was forced into, I want them to die. No. The Arabs of Palestine deserve better lives. They deserve to be liberated from the Palestinian cause. How does that happen? It's not my call, but this is how I see it. They deserve to live good lives and get rid of this obsession with returning to where my great-grandfather was born. Because if we are all gonna do this, the entire globe has to shift massively.
I think the Palestinians deserve a better narrative. That's what they deserve. Their narrative is based on the struggle against the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And if that's your narrative and that's your identity, there is nothing virtuous about it. There's nowhere positive to go with that. it only ends in violence and destruction, which has been their history. Same for radical Islam. They deserve a better story. A story like the Jewish people, a story like the Christian people, which is our room in this world, our place in this world, is to bring light, to bring goodness, to bring love into the world.
They need a better story, a better narrative, and better goals.
Yeah.
And then our life might become much easier. But I do believe that we are heading into the right direction. I am very optimistic.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.